Okay, welcome to my channel. Today is November 2nd, just the day before the presidential election. So I'm going to be posting this video early because everybody's going to be watching the TV, I suppose, tomorrow. Anyways, moving on. We're going to have a very short 8-minute video, and it's going to get straight to the point on how to get low-income housing assistance, okay? That would be how to get low-income housing assistance if you're on Section 8 or affordable housing, and any other name that it might go by, including subsidized housing, okay? So with that being said, I want to talk about criteria, okay? These are the people that have special criteria that are going to be considered ahead of everybody else and are going to have an easier time if there is, in fact, a list or a lottery, okay? So if you are 62 years or older, you will be considered a special category. Second to that would be if you're 55 and older. If you have also served in the military and you are a veteran, then you would also have a strong consideration. The other people that have a consideration are going to be people that have survived domestic violence. If you're spending more than half of your income on rent, if you have a pregnancy or you have a child probably under 1 year old, these are also considerations. Also where you're applying. So if you live in the same zip code as the housing authority in your city, you would get a slight preferential difference there. Some of the primary factors they're considering are people that are on SSDI, okay? So that is a disability check. If you have a mental issue, if you have a physical issue that is intending on being, that will last longer than 12 months and into the future, okay? This is going to be something that's going to be going on for a long time. There are strong preferences for you. These are the categories that are most considered. So these are the people that would be housed, fairly quickly compared to other people that would be on a waiting list for the next decade, okay? Without those criterias, you're going to be in for a heck of a wait, all right? The second thing I want to tell you is there are 3 categories of housing in which you should apply for, okay? The first is the most common, and it's called the Housing Choice Voucher. So you call the housing authority, you apply in person, or you apply on phone, and I'm going to show you a list of every housing authority around the country in a minute, okay? Once you apply, you give the details, then they determine whether or not you get a housing choice voucher. This program used to be formerly the Section 8 housing, okay? That's back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and all that. They don't call it that anymore. Now, the second program I'm going to talk about is going to be the Continuum of Care, and it also goes by the Coordinated Access System or Housing First. It is intentionally a program that is hidden, and it is mostly for people that are homeless or chronically homeless, okay? And that's a lot of people, including those that are just about to be evicted or recently just now getting on the streets. Also people that are living under a bridge or in a homeless shelter, okay? So if you are homeless or chronically homeless, you could apply for COC housing or the Coordinated Access System, which is the Housing First program run by the federal government. Now, let me give you some distinctions between some of these programs. I will in a minute. And the third is going to be subsidized housing, okay? A little bit different. There's no voucher involved in that. It just simply means that there are landlords and housing complexes that participate in a federal program that gives tax credits to the owners. In return, they lease their apartments to people that would meet the low-income criteria. No voucher needed, okay? Now, let me tell you something. There are a million ways and frauds on the internet and on Google, okay? So if you're not going through Section 8 Go, then you're increasing the likelihood you'll probably get scammed, all right? And we'll get further into that. Now, let's talk about each program individually. The Housing Authority, so if you were to go into Google and you typed in Housing Authority Miami, then you would be applying by phone or in person, and you would only get one choice. Well, there are 2 actual choices of housing. The first is they can give you a housing choice voucher where you can go to anybody, any landlord, and then offer them the voucher in return for reduced rent, okay? The second option is when the city owns the actual buildings, which means you're not taking a voucher to an individual that's separate of the state. You're going to a project, just like you see on TV, but not quite as bad. So the state around our county would own the building, and they call that project-based housing. I don't often recommend that because some of the worst actors I've ever seen live in these housing projects, but it's strictly up to you, okay? So you have housing choice voucher to the individual landlords, and then you have project-based housing, which the housing authority physically owns. Those are A and B options, okay? There are none other. Then the second one we discussed was a continuum of care. They offer three options actually. They go on a point system, and if you don't pass their assessment test, then you will get a flyer with a bunch of numbers that will likely lead you to nowhere other than food banks and other additional resources for people to potentially help pay your rent for a month or two, okay? The second option is that if you score a moderately high on that particular assessment, then they would recommend you for rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is a program that once they give you an assessment, they have 7 days to connect you with a housing navigator, and then an additional 30 to maybe 45 days in which for you to take that and then find a place to live. It's just like a housing choice voucher, but the difference would be the payments they're offering, okay? So they may offer and say, we'll pay your rent, 100% of your rent for January, February, and March. But after that, we're going to reduce the amount we're willing to pay that landlord by 10 or 20% each additional month until we don't pay anything at all. In other words, it's to help you get on your feet. So January, February, March, all the rent, and then after that, if say you were paying $500, they may reduce it down to $400, then $300, then $200, and then it evaporates, and now you're a normal market rate tenant, and you have no assistance, okay? So that's a tricky game, and you need to be able to make sure that you have an income or a way to pay that rent once the funds evaporate. These rapid rehousing programs are a good one to help people that are temporarily have an offset or a problem, but they're notorious for sometimes not paying their bills, okay? And it causes problems for management, and a lot of people don't like to accept rapid rehousing because of that unpredictable nature of running out of funds. Now, the continuum of care is run by nonprofits, okay? It has nothing to do with Section 8, the HUD, Housing Authority, or any of that, okay? So the federal government cuts a check to all these different charities. The charities in turn take that funding, and then they pay the rent through the Continuum of Care Coordinated Access Housing First program, which is rapid rehousing. Now, the second one is if you are chronically homeless and also homeless over 12 months, then there's a second form of housing they do offer, and it's called permanent supportive housing. That is when they pay 100% of your rent, or as close to it as they can get, and that would run for a lifetime, okay? And so they're very careful about who they give it to, and it's typically going to be people that have been on the street for a long time, that have severe mental or physical issues, including drug addiction and many, many other things, okay? It's more difficult to get that, but I've had a stellar reputation in my consulting services of helping people, be able to test high enough to get it. It just depends on whether or not the housing authority, not the housing authority, the charity that's dispersing these funds for your rent has enough money to take on a bunch of PSH clients, okay? Now, the third option is going to be your subsidized housing, okay? Look, if these people are not directly connected to HUD, okay, Section 8 GO and the Housing Authority, then you're taking a risk that they're running their own private lottery, their own private waiting list, and then their goal could simply be to just use clever words like low income or affordable housing, when in fact they're just a market rate house or apartment complex posing as somebody that's working with the federal government, okay? So it's really important that you guys use Section 8 GO to find legitimate landlords and properties in which you can rent. Now, all that happens there is you apply, you get a list, you have to meet the same standards that any normal market rate person has to meet, but the ending result would be is if you do get their attention and they want to lease to you, then they're going to give you a apartment or a house at a pretty big discount for the foreseeable future, as long as you don't violate any policies, okay? So just consider it a discount rent, all right? So those are the only three options really on the market. Now, if you live in a bigger city like New York or Chicago or LA, sometimes the county will have additional programs that go by a tremendous number of names, and that's not also including the private charities that also have their own programs as well, that have nothing to do with HUD, that have nothing to do with COC, that have nothing to do with subsidized housing, but it's literally the county offering their own program. I can't offer you details on that because I would need to make about 900 videos to cover every city and every private program in the country, okay? So if you live in a major city, you can get in contact with your social services and see how many private programs there are, okay? I won't be covering that. Now, with all that being said, if you can meet all those criteria, you have those three options. I should warn you, I don't know how long this video will be on YouTube, but if you do end up watching this in 2021 or another year, things may have changed. As you very well know, if Joe Biden does get elected, then we'll be switching to a universal housing choice voucher, and so that universal voucher will cover anybody that's low income, and it will also take down the criteria in which you would need in order. It would take down the, I guess, the heavy limits they have. So a lot more people would be able to get a housing choice voucher. It doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be any more additional housing on the market. It just seems that it would be that more people would be able to apply without having severe mental, physical, being a veteran, being a senior, and other things. Okay, it would just be a lot easier system to work with double the funding. Okay. So I'm going to check the time real quick because, like I said, I wanted to get directly to the point so you know, and I'm going to show you the websites real quick. So if we go to HUD Exchange, now just bear in mind, I'm going to put these links directly in the comment section of the video, not in the actual description, but the comment section. So HUD Exchange, now if you look down here, it lists every state. Now this is going to be for the continuum of care. I've even had clients say, oh, well, the continuum of care doesn't exist. Well, it certainly does exist on the federal government's website. So now the next one's going to be being able to look here. And so if you want to find your housing authority for each city and state, no matter where you live, you can go to this link, which is HUD.gov in their programs, and you can select the state and city in which you live in, and it will connect you with a legitimate housing authority, and you can apply for Section 8. Okay, so the last one was COC. This is Section 8. Now, if you want to do subsidized housing, you need to go to Section 8. Okay. Now, this site is a federal agency, and so it's run by the government. So that means that everybody that's posting properties on this particular website is legitimate. So if you're looking for a discount property, Section 8, or even COC housing, you would want to go here first and above all other resources on Google, okay? Now, the last thing I want to mention is you have consultants, okay? I'm one of the very few in the country. In fact, I don't know of anybody else that actually does consulting work the way that I do. So my services will resume on January 1st because we're in the middle of a holiday. But the other option is, if you look here, and I will include this, it's going to be HUD.gov's rental assistance. And if you look at the bottom here, if you need advice, you can contact a housing counseling agency or toll-free number, 800-569-4287. Look, they're not going to give you the critical inside information that I would give you, okay? They're going to give you probably some generic information, but they will lead you in the right direction, and they are the U.S. government, so you should expect that whatever they're referring you to is going to be legitimate, okay? So this is all of it in a nutshell, okay? This is the fastest way that you're going to be able to go out and find housing. So with that being said, I've enjoyed hosting on here, and I hope to see you all again. Thank you. Bye.